When the speakers of different languages interact closely, it is typical for their languages to influence each other. Thailand has been a melting pot of various cultures since forever, hence the Thai language has been influenced by a lot of different languages. Now, the beauty of Thai language is that it tries to preserve the spellings of the original languages, making it extremely simple to spot the loanwords. However, since these languages are completely different from Thai, the pronunciation changes rather dramatically, rendering the speakers of the original language completely oblivious to the fact that they actually knew the word. Which brings me to my first point, consonant clusters. Now, the Thai script works perfectly well for the words of Thai origin, making them largely phonetic. However, when you try to use this to write words from foreign languages with a lot of clustered consonants, you can see what happens to the pronunciation. Nakhon Sawan, Nagaraswarga, Suvarnabhumi, Suvarnabhumi, Antrasao, ultrasound. So a typical feature of the loanwords from these languages with conjunct consonants is karan, without which it would have been extremely difficult to try and read these words. So whenever we observe such weird spellings or a spelling pronunciation mismatch, we can instantly suspect whether this word was actually Thai. Looking at Sanskrit and Pali in particular brings me to my second point, tone markers. Sanskrit words may not have tone markers. Now hear me out before you go bashing the comment section. I am not talking about the actual pronunciation of the tones, which is a complicated subject out of the scope of this video. What I'm really talking about is the appearance of the tone markers, or Roop Vanayu. Let's take a look at Bangkok's full name, for instance. 168 letter long name, but absolutely no tone markers. A coincidence? I don't think so. Take a few other Thai cities. Now, except for some cities in the north, if you look at others of Sanskrit origin, you would not find any tone markers. Thai subjects, for instance, most of them would be of Sanskrit origin. Again, zero tone markers. Now, this is interesting. Except for the number 0, which is based out of Sanskrit, others which are based on Chinese do actually have some tone markers. So this makes me think if Thai does try to preserve some of the characteristics of the original languages, since Chinese is a tonal language and Sanskrit is not. So if we were to draw inferences from this, words from tonal languages like Chinese may have tone markers. From non-tonal languages like Khmer or English may not have tone markers. In a special case of Sanskrit and Pali, they do not have tone markers. Now let me reiterate what I said in the beginning of the video. This is not going to hold true 100% of times, but more often than not, it will. Now moving on to point number 3, letter covers. Sanskrit has a lot of consonant sounds which do not exist in Thai, which are represented by these letters. Now these are not so common in words of non-Sanskrit origin, so whenever you observe this in a Thai word, there's a very high probability that this in fact is Sanskrit. Let's try to understand the pronunciation difference here. Kosana, Ghoshana, Sit, Shishya, Pipitapan, Vividhabhand, Sukanya, Sukanya. So these duplicate letters are an important feature of words from Sanskrit and Pali and perhaps Old Khmer. So let's try to recap what we had seen so far. In order to identify Sanskrit loanwords in Thai, look for no tone markers. Look for consonant clusters and karan. Look for duplicate letters and try to read it phonetically. Now let's try and test this and see if it actually works. Let's look at a few Thai cities. Roi It. We can see some tone markers here. This is definitely not Sanskrit. Nonthaburi. Okay, we can see some consonant clusters here and no tone markers. So this is Nandapuri, or the city of happiness. Pichit. There's a third consonant cluster here. This is Vichitra, or perhaps the weird city. I don't know. Pra. Now you can see a tone marker here. This means to spread. This is not Sanskrit. Pechabun. The spelling is pretty weird. This is definitely Sanskrit. Vajrapurna, or the perfect diamond. Now this is interesting. Krabi. There are two forms of this word. Without a tone marker, it is kapi or monkey. With a tone marker, it means a long sword. Now, I really do want to know what you think on this. Please do let me know down in the comments. What do you think it means? Let's look at a few Thai subjects. Sthapatayakammasa or architecture. Again, no tone markers and a lot of consonant clusters. This is Sthapatya Karma Shastra. Nati Polamuang. Okay, we can see some tone markers here. This is not Sanskrit. Yantrakam. Okay, this is definitely Sanskrit. Mechanical engineering. Data structures and algorithm. This is definitely not Sanskrit. Now, let's look at a few compound words. Ranahan. Okay, so this is half Sanskrit. Ahar. Pu boripo. Again, paribhog. Chang yon. Yantra. So what do you think on this? Please do let me know down in the comments below. Thank you.